This surveillance video shows Rashawn Anderson the night he shot a Chinatown restaurant worker 11 times while he was out on bail for a previous crime.
Is not working.
Well, is it a get-out-of-jail-free card or a way to make the criminal justice system more fair? One group says freedom shouldn't be for sale, while critics say the movement to get rid of cash bail is putting all of us in danger. Are you sorry?
I'm sorry that anybody has to go through anything like that.
Not only does he get a get-out-of-jail-free card, he can't even apologize properly to this person that he shot 7 times. Shot at 11 times.
This surveillance video shows Rashawn Anderson the night he shot a Chinatown restaurant worker 11 times while he was out on bail for a previous crime.
So sometimes people have mental breakdowns.
Prosecutors detail a timeline in court records. In November of 2021, Anderson is arrested for pandering and carrying a concealed weapon. He's released without having to pay bail and told to stay out of trouble. The next day, he's arrested again for burglary and theft. The Bail Project, a nonprofit, posts $3,000 bond. 6 days later, Anderson opens fire on Wang.
It's an absolute tragedy, and the Bail Project, myself speaking for the Bail Project, found it absolutely shocking.
In January, we spoke with the Bail Project Regional Director Cameron Pipe.
Did the Bail Project find any red flags to indicate perhaps he wasn't the right candidate to help out?
Every single decision that we make at the Bail Project goes through the same exact thorough review.
In September, the victim, Chengyan Wang, filed this lawsuit against the Bail Project for bailing Anderson out despite his criminal record.
I don't think they care. And truly they don't care, because some man nearly lost his life.
Husband and wife Manny and Lilia Ceballos run Aztec bail bonds in Las Vegas.
We've been doing this for 17 years.
They question the Bail Project's tactics while they claim they adhere to guidelines.
We pick and choose who we want to do business with. We just don't bail out habitual problem cases.
The Bail Project says bail shouldn't be a business to begin with and disproportionately affects the low income and people of color.
I probably wouldn't have been able to co-sign for myself because I'm not from out here.
Anderson told us he did have the money, but needed a co-signer. When we reached out again to the Bail Project in December, Deputy General Counsel Katie Poore did an interview.
We provide free bail assistance and what we call community release with support, which includes rides to and from court notifications, and we attempt to navigate services available in the community. Based on our clients' self-identified needs.
But Anderson, who told us he was previously diagnosed as schizophrenic, claims that didn't happen.
Did they offer you any mental health resources?
No.
Anderson, who spoke with us from jail, is heading to prison to serve 7 to 18 years.
I don't think I'm a danger to the community.
The Bail Project ceased operations here in Las Vegas earlier this month. I asked if this is because of Anderson's case and was told it was just part of some restructuring. The Bail Project is funded by foundations, philanthropists, and individual donors. Celebrities like Danny Glover, John Legend, and Richard Branson are on the advisory board, according to the website.
A celebrity-backed bail reform group has shut down its Las Vegas chapter after being sued for helping release a career criminal. Rashawn Gaston Anderson was released after the Bail Project paid his $3,000 bail. Just 6 days later, police say he opened fire in a Las Vegas restaurant, shooting a waiter 11 times. The waiter survived, thank goodness, and is now suing the organization. Some of the big names supporting this group included Danny Glover, John Legend, and Sir Richard Branson.
And that's why we see such a high rate of recidivism, because there's no accountability, there's no repercussions. It's just a vicious cycle. They go to jail, they don't get the help they need, whether it's from drug addiction or mental illness, and we just see it over and over. We need to, reform our bail programs. We need DAs who are not soft on crime, and we need more help for those who have these underlying mental conditions that are going to jail and released in and out, in and out.
And also, I think that it has become very cool to support criminal reform, right, with celebrities.
But back to the Bail Project. They didn't do their due diligence.
No.
They are this blanket organization. It's celebrities or, and other backers, other wealthy people that have this idea in their head of what they think, justice reform is. and what cashless bail should and should not be. And so they just go out and they're handing out money. Meanwhile, they let this guy, this career criminal who's a pretty bad guy, out and he shot someone 11 times. That's happening all across the country, and it's really happening in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles and also in San Francisco.
Well, in Minneapolis, in the wake of the George Floyd riots, even Kamala Harris, then running for vice president, was donating to these funds to release some of these people back onto the street. Now, these were looters. These were people committing crimes. These weren't just peaceful protesters.
Not only politicians like Kamala Harris is willing to pay your bail, so are these Hollywood elites. Your friend Chrissy Teigen. So people know that she's willing to pay your bail if you just so happen to get arrested for rioting, looting, burning, vandalizing businesses after George Floyd, because, well, that's everybody's cousin was George Floyd. That's everybody's uncle. So people had to react the way they did, right? But then these are the same people that complain about the January 6th Capitol riots and so on. These people are willing to bail out career criminals, but they hate a person that has a certain political leaning. These people are hated above career criminals that will kill you, rob you, just because their skin tone. Somebody's race shouldn't be the determining factor of whether they should get a second chance. First of all, how bad were the convictions, the prior convictions? And does this person deserve a second chance based upon their history, not their race? Here's Colin Kaepernick, the king of wokeness, calling these rioters freedom fighters, and The Weeknd participating in helping bail out these violent attackers. You're going to see videos of so-called protesters. What they were really doing out here, what they were really doing was destroying businesses, attacking people. How are these freedom fighters?
Fucking done with people like you. I have an opinion. Get away from my wife! Oh man. Word. Niggas already know the motherfucking resume straight up and down. Oh my God.
These people did this for no reason. It's not gonna bring George back here. George is in a better place than we are. Last night, I'm gonna be honest, I wish I was where George was, because this is ridiculous. These people are tearing up our livelihood.
It doesn't take a sophisticated assessment tool to see this person is dangerous.
Complete menace of the city.
In 2018, police say Twyman led them on a high-speed chase, crashed into an SUV with a mother and 3 young children inside, then ran off into the darkness. Inside his car, police found a half pound of marijuana, cocaine, heroin, scales, a gun, ammo, and 7 mobile phones, including one that contained videos so concerning, U.S. Marshals picked him up in Arkansas. A Milwaukee judge set bail at $3,000 cash, and a few months later, Twyman was out.
He was free to wander the streets in Rome, to do whatever he wanted to do.
Since then, he's been in and out of jail, skipping court at least 6 times along the way. And in January, U.S. Marshals went to get him again. This time, they found him at his mom's Milwaukee apartment, along with a 9mm handgun, 17-round magazine, 2 pounds of marijuana, and wads of cash. On April 14th, police say Tavon Luckett went into the Quick Mart to get pizza rolls. When he came out, he recognized Kenny Twyman and called his name. A witness said the 2 men appeared to shake hands before Twyman shot Luckett in the neck and chest, then hopped in a car and rode away.
Did that cash bond keep your family safe?
No. No, it did not. We are still not safe.
Nick Sainer is co-founder of Justice Point, Milwaukee County's pretrial services agency, and an outspoken advocate of bail reform.
If money isn't going to work, and money doesn't work, then we have to take a look at other options.
But bail reform means different things to different people. The Waukesha parade attack last fall focused attention on low bail for violent offenders.
Darrell Brooks Jr., another case of someone out on bail that should have been in jail.
It's the morning of November 29th on Amsterdam Avenue in West Harlem when police say 36-year-old Kareem Azizi pulled a baseball bat out from his pants, stepped forward, swung, and slammed the bat into the back of an unsuspecting man's head. The 47-year-old man, who police say is homeless, may have just gotten into an argument with Azizi. Sprawled out on the sidewalk, he cowers and flinches as the suspect threatens to strike again. A manhunt follows, and in a week's time on Wednesday, police had their man in custody.
Maybe stand closer to the plate next time you swing.
By Wednesday night, he was back in his home, released on $7,500 bail. Prejudice and bias influences who is considered dangerous.
Crystal Johnson wiped away tears when she talked about her 19-year-old son, Andreas Patterson. She says her son was so loving and kind. He loved basketball and fishing, and his friends adored him. But Andreas was shot and killed in 2019. 20-year-old Travion Tatum is charged with his murder. Johnson says Tatum tried to rob her son and ended up shooting him several times in the back.
This is actually the first year that we celebrated Christmas since then, and I still really didn't celebrate it.
Tatum was arrested and posted $50,000 bond. 6 months later, he was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon for pointing a rifle at 2 women. The DA asked for no bail, but a judge granted bond. Even with several bond violations, Tatum later posted bond again.
I've asked, every time we go to court, I've asked for to revoke his bond.
Tatum was just arrested for another murder charge. Prosecutors say he shot and killed John Kelly back on February 8th. According to court records, more than 40 shots were fired on the 800 block of Dunson Glen, killing Kelly.
I just hate that another family has to lose a loved one because the justice system didn't do what they should have done in the beginning.
The suspect's taken into custody by the NYPD, and one suspect said, hey, look, he's not worried. He'll be out soon. Listen to what he said.
Criminal justice experts say a host of factors could be behind this recent surge. The country reopening, availability of guns, and even just that it's so hot outside in some areas. But many experts are also pointing to one policy change: bail reform. It's the idea that people accused of misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies can be released before their trials or have their bail amounts reduced. New York State was one of the first to sign a sweeping version into law. The goal: make it fairer for poor people who were likely to get stuck in jail waiting for trial. COVID accelerated the trend as cities tried to reduce the number of people crammed into jails. But then the backlash. New York rolled back its law months later after law enforcement officials reported a spike in crime. And in Harris County, Texas, officials say the damage from the bail reform is clear. Here's CNBC's Valerie Castro.
We didn't have that sibling rivalry. He just always looked up to me and has the utmost respect.
He may have been a lot taller, but Patrick Akins was Teresa Seck's little brother.
He was a positive person, loved to be around people.
Last September, he was gunned down outside his Houston home during an attempted robbery. Police would eventually arrest and charge this man, Darian Caraway, who allegedly committed the crime while out on numerous felony bonds for previous arrests.
7 times we had the chance to hold him. 7 times.
Rania Mankarius is the CEO of Crime Stoppers Houston. She says it's a common scenario that contributes to the city's rising crime rate.
222 murders already this year, up by 42% just this year. 91%, up by 91% when we compare that statistic to 2 years ago.
Mankarius says after a 2016 civil rights lawsuit against the court's reformed misdemeanor bail practices, Harris County judges are now reluctant to revoke or issue cash-only bonds, even in felony cases, in an effort to uphold a presumption of innocence. Texas lawmakers introduced bills to address concerns. Organizations like the Texas chapter of the ACLU and the Texas Jail Project fought against them. The ACLU argued the legislation would enrich the predatory bail industry, punish the poor, and trample on Texans' rights and freedoms.
It would only worsen the outcome for individuals with mental illness.
Teresa Seck testified at that same legislative hearing earlier this year to raise awareness about what she says is a failure in the system.
You can't help but to think that if that person was in jail my brother would probably be alive today.
We are trying to bring back some type of balance and reasonable thinking and common sense into the criminal justice system, because what we're doing now is not working.
Menkarius says concerned Houston citizens are now gathering at homes like this one to learn more.
This is PR bonds, violent offenders who were given a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Sek will continue to speak out for her brother, who, unlike the man accused in his murder, never got another chance.
What's the limit? Is murder enough? I don't know.
Palacios was later found by officers and arrested on charges of criminal mischief, 3 counts of menacing, and 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. But he was soon released without needing to post bail because the offenses are misdemeanors covered by New York's 2019 bail reform law. Governor Kathy Hochul even addressing the incident, seeming to call out the DA, inquiring why Palacios was eligible for release. Just last month, after a man was caught on camera appearing to sucker punch someone else on the street, he was released without bail on supervised release.
It was just 2 days after being released from jail on a $100,000 bond that 23-year-old Jonathan Welch went on a deadly rampage in Harper Woods at his mother's home on Kenosha Street. He barricaded himself inside his mother's home for 7 hours, shooting at police and lighting the home on fire. Police say he killed his 70-year-old stepfather, Robert Bray Jr., and his 22-year-old girlfriend, Zelaya Frazier, then stabbing his mother in the back. His 1-year-old son left unharmed. This all happened while he was on an electronic tether and was ordered not to have contact with his girlfriend after a June 2nd incident for allegedly strangling his girlfriend with an extension cord, pouring gasoline on her, and burning her with a spatula. While the $100,000 bond was set by Magistrate Judge Dawn White, Welch was able to pay just $10,000 or 10% of that $100,000 bond to get out of jail. Welch is now facing several charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and 4 counts of assault with intent to murder.
Tonight, growing outrage after a parolee was released, then seemingly unleashed into a Sacramento neighborhood where police say he killed a woman inside her own home. That suspect making his first court appearance this afternoon. Thanks for joining us here at 5. I'm Tony Lopez.
And I'm Elizabeth Kling. Our news is also streaming on CBSN Sacramento. So why was this man free in the first place? CBS 13's Marissa Perlman is getting answers and joins us live now with more. Marissa.
This crime brutal, this loss tragic for this neighborhood and this woman who was clearly loved by her neighbors. This woman's family has just arrived here at the scene, but we're respecting their privacy as they start construction on the damage at this home. We now know tonight the suspect was seen on a neighbor's surveillance camera just 1 day before the killing here.
Count 4 alleges a violation of Penal Code.
The suspected killer, 51-year-old Troy Davis, eyes pinned to the ground inside a Sacramento court holding cell, facing a judge for the first time. Now accused of sexually assaulting and killing a Land Park woman and her 2 dogs before setting the home on fire. It's a place we're told the victim lived for almost a decade.
It really upsets me because we are very so close-knit on this street.
Harvey Sanchez, a neighbor, calls this a senseless crime. He knew the 61-year-old woman, a state worker who was living alone with her dogs at the time she was killed. For years, Harvey says they'd get together for movie nights and attend block parties.
She was very, very big on her dogs, which way they were old dogs, which we loved them.
Neighbors say Land Park is not known for crime.
That doesn't happen here.
Mark Souza says now this neighborhood is shrouded in shock.
But it's just more of just sadness. You know, we feel for her and the dogs and how they passed, and we hope they didn't suffer.
The suspected killer is a parolee who was released from prison, then stole a car, but was let out under the state's zero bail policy, even though his criminal history includes violent crimes in 2 counties, including assault with a deadly weapon and robbery. The district attorney says the state is seeing a tsunami of violent crimes and points to poor public policy as a root cause.
But the public, I think, would be shocked to know what do you mean we're going to let this person out on zero bail?
Officers arriving at the scene on St. Paul found the 26-year-old police officer shot several times. He'd been dispatched there to check on a man slumped over the steering wheel of his truck.
You go to a check on the welfare,
and now you're fighting for your life.
Police say the man in the truck shot Officer Herb Davis, and Davis fired back, hitting the man before he stole Davis's squad car. Surveillance video shows the stolen squad car speeding away from a couple of angles, heading east on St. Paul. Moments later, it crashed at 17th and Clybourne. The suspect, 22-year-old Jetron Rodthong, was arrested. He was free on $3,300 bail in 3 open cases, charged with multiple felonies, including nearly running down a police officer in a stolen car.
There's a lot of things I could be frustrated about, but my thing is focusing on the behaviors and trying to understand the why. Why did this have to take place?
Rodthong's family wonders the same thing.
What he did is wrong. It's going to get consequence.
Okay.
Ain't nobody, what he did is wrong and going to be consequence.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Okay.
You do what you pay stupid game.
The head of the police union was at a fundraiser last night with the police chief for the detective shot in the 3rd Ward 2 weeks ago, when they learned another officer had been shot.
You see everybody's phones going off, the chief's phone's going off, and you realize, and everybody's looking at their phone, and you're just like, oh my God, again, once, and so soon.
Like Rodthong, the suspect in the detective shooting was also free on bail. The union head says it's hard for officers to take.
Is it frustrating that they're getting hurt by someone like this that could be behind bars?
I think it is. It's super frustrating for them. It's super demoralizing because the officers have arrested this guy 2 or 3 times in the past.
More pressure tonight to change New York's new criminal justice reform laws as one suspect is released without bail, despite being accused of 2 unprovoked attacks on women. CBS 2 political reporter Marcia Kramer says the man was freed, even though he had not shown up in court for a previous assault.
Eugene Webb, a 26-year-old homeless man, wasn't smiling when cops arrested him, charged with 2 separate unprovoked attacks on women within hours of each other, including this 23-year-old too terrified to show her face. The attack so violent, it knocked out a tooth.
I got pushed from the side and then attacked again, and I was punched in the head.
But Webb might have been smiling today, because under the new criminal justice reform laws, he was released without bail, despite the fact that there was a warrant for his arrest for not showing up in court to face charges from a similar attack in September.
Should he have been released without bail?
He should not have been released, in my opinion, and in fact, he should have been sent for a minimum, at least a 72-hour evaluation to see if he has mental health issues.
Appearing on The Point, CBSN New York's political talk show, Staten Island Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis differentiated from other politicians who have called for a so-called criminal justice carve-out to give judges discretion to set bail in cases of public safety. She says the law has to be rewritten.
We should be crafting a bill that should, number one, give everyone their constitutionally protected right to a speedy trial, and that means investing in our court system, but also ensures that we're only dealing here with low-level crimes and perhaps first-time offenders, which is not what this law does at all.
And just looking at the case of Eugene Webb and many others,
we should also be considering criminal history. Why should someone with multiple prior arrests or multiple convictions be eligible for this?
Those changes would help protect women like Eugene Webb's alleged victim.
I was screaming for help and trying to say stop. He was very mentally unstable, so it's a sad reality.
Well, Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins said on last week's edition of The Point she would look at possible bail reform changes. But there appears to be stark divisions in Albany. Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie says he doesn't think changes are necessary. The big question, will he change his mind?
Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies are searching for a sexual battery suspect who was released from custody just days ago. Ron Smith is wanted for an attack along Central Avenue November 27th, 2 Saturdays ago. But 1 week ago, Smith was arrested on a robbery charge under a different first name, Stephen. Well, after all of that confusion, Smith was released on Monday, and now deputies are hoping for tips to find him again.
A Minnesota bail fund supported by Vice President Kamala Harris during her 2020 campaign helped set an accused domestic abuser free. Now, just weeks after his release, he's back behind bars after prosecutors charged him with murder.
Well, having been jailed on domestic violence charges, George Howard posted an $11,500 bail. He did it with the support of the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Now, the Freedom Fund became well known during the riots which followed the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Politicians and celebs got on board as they were posting bail for those arrested during the riots, and Kamala Harris was one of them, evidenced by a tweet from June of 2020. If you're able to chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. Now, with support like that, the Freedom Fund banked some $35 million and continued to bail people out, stating if a judge determines a person is eligible for bail, they should not be stuck in jail because they don't have the same money others do. Now, one of those bailed out was George Howard, August the 6th. A few weeks later, there was a road rage incident. Damian Ortiz was shot and killed. Howard was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The Minnesota Freedom Fund acknowledged supporting Howard's bail and tweeted, under new leadership, MFF has implemented changes to its policies and procedures, and we will continue to assess them and to ensure that we are being responsive to the safety and needs of our community.
Another suspect allegedly committing violent crimes while out on bail, and it's raising questions about how bond amounts are set. A Milwaukee man accused of murdering 2 people after his bail had been significantly reduced in a previous case. CBS 58's Adam Reif live in our newsroom to break down this case for us. Adam.
Jessup, earlier this year, Alan Grant was charged with fleeing an officer and possessing a firearm as a felon. A judge lowered his bail from $10,000 down to just $1,000. He paid it and was released. Then 2 weeks ago, he allegedly shot and killed 2 people.
You hate getting a phone call as a judge to say somebody you released on bail had committed a terrible crime.
But former state Supreme Court Justice Janine Geske says it obviously does happen. On July 8th of this year, Alan Grant was out on bail when he allegedly shot and killed 2 people. A judge had reduced Grant's bail in the previous case from the original $10,000 down to just $1,000.
And that's a substantial jump, but the judge must have thought that the defendant would be able to appear.
Under the Wisconsin state
avoidable, and I think it was preventable.
Sean McClinton is now facing rape charges for the 4th time in his life. The most recent allegation just this week after he was bailed out of jail awaiting trial on a different rape charge.
Someone like this should not be freed by a bail fund.
The district attorney says the Massachusetts bail fund put up the $15,000 to get him out in mid-July, and 3 weeks later, he's back behind bars.
This poor woman had no idea that he's been convicted 2 times, a pending case, and out on bail.
Colby Bruno with the Victim Rights Law Center says the bail fund was established with donations to help low-income suspects accused of minor crimes. The district attorney shares her outrage, saying the fund has no responsibility to or compassion for the victims and survivors of his crimes or the families that he has destroyed.
Major Hernandez has repeated run-ins with the law that date back to about 2017 when his case made national headlines as he was in Rikers Island. And it does appear this morning that's where he's headed again after allegedly opening fire here in Midtown just next door to St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is the latest look at the 22-year-old as he was led away in handcuffs outside the Midtown precinct Monday afternoon. Bronx man is set to be arraigned today on attempted murder charges after a card game here didn't go his way. Police say he fired shots on East 50th Street near St. Patrick's Cathedral, and despite the busy area, nobody was hit by the bullets, but a car was. We have been reporting on Hernandez's legal woes for the past 5 years as he became the so-called poster boy for bail reform in the state. When he was a teenager, Hernandez became the focus of criminal justice activists pushing for a change to New York's bail laws. Hernandez maintained his innocence dating back to a 2015 shooting and refused prosecutors' plea deal, opting instead to stay at Rikers and await trial. Well, the charges were ultimately dropped by the Bronx district attorney in 2018, and the DA said that it hoped Hernandez would, quote, put his life on the right path to succeed, saying now it is up to him. But since then, he's been caught up in several other violent criminal cases, specifically in the Bronx, which are still pending in criminal court. And And now Hernandez is facing a slew of more charges, including attempted murder and criminal possession of a weapon. Again, we do anticipate that he makes his appearance in the Manhattan Criminal Court.
A Houston man charged in the shooting death of a teenager during a road rage incident has posted bond. Houston police say that Gerald Williams is responsible for killing 17-year-old David Castro after an Astros game in July near Minute Maid Park. Houston NBC affiliate KPRC discovered that Williams was released from prison in February of 2020 after serving 12 years for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. In a social media post, Castro's father criticized Williams' release and the fact that bond wasn't set at the maximum amount.
It's a new day, a new chapter. The healing starts now.
That's some of the reaction as Governor Pritzker signs off on major changes to the criminal justice system in Illinois. And many in law enforcement, they're not happy about it. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Bradley.
And I'm Lourdes Duarte. We begin with our top story here tonight. Illinois will become the first state in the nation to eliminate pretrial cash bail.
That's just one part of this massive 700-page law that Governor Pritzker put his signature on this afternoon. Our political reporter, Taman Bradley, joins us with the story.
Ben and Lourdes, this sweeping new law is meant to reshape criminal justice and policing in Illinois. Democrats are holding it up high, while Republicans and many in law enforcement condemn it. The Criminal Justice and Police Reform Bill is the dream of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. They pursued it in response to the killing of George Floyd and the protests that followed. With the stroke of a pen, Governor Pritzker made the reforms law, calling it a special occasion.
One that remarks a transformative step forward in Illinois' effort to lead the country in dismantling systemic racism.
It's February, and we're celebrating Black History Month. Black history is about monumental moments and movements that serve as catalysts for change. Today is both.
The centerpiece of the massive law, ending cash bail. Almost everyone would be released from jail while awaiting trial unless a judge decides otherwise. The reforms also provide more rights for people accused of crimes and victims. People in police custody will be allowed to make 3 phone calls, while barriers are removed to help more people access the state's victims' compensation program. The police reforms are the most controversial measures. The legislation increases certification for officers, allows for complaints to be submitted anonymously, and mandates the use of body cameras. Officers would be held responsible for turning the body cam on.
But there is a concern that this bill establishes a new criminal penalty for police officers who do not use their body cameras when they're required to by law. I believe that this bill actually makes us, as a state, the public, less safe.
In a statement, House Republican leader Jim Durkin said the governor's support of House Bill 3653 is an insult to our first responders, law enforcement, and law-abiding citizens of Illinois who want to live free of violence and destruction from the criminal element. It's clear that Governor Pritzker does not understand this bill and what it means to our criminal justice system. Illinois and its citizens will not be safer because of this bill. But the governor says the law, which provides funding for police training, will in fact make Illinois safer.
Opponents of this law don't want any change, don't believe there is injustice in the system, and are preying upon fear of change to lie and fearmonger in defense of the status quo.
The reforms were backed by Attorney General Kwame Raoul and Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, both Democrats.
There are members of a family who are never going to see their relatives again. Why? Because Lawrence Paul Anderson was released from prison.
Anderson confessed he killed 41-year-old Lynn Blankenship, cut her heart out, brought the heart across the street to his aunt and uncle's house, where he cooked it with potatoes and tried to feed it to him. When they refused, he killed his uncle, wounded his aunt, and murdered the couple's 4-year-old granddaughter. Anderson was in the early years of a 20-year sentence for drug and gun crimes. He's been in and out of prison since the 1990s. Anderson applied for a commutation in July 2019, but was denied. Then on January 2020, Anderson once again applied for a commutation, and the Pardon and Parole Board approved it by a vote of 3-1. That recommendation, along with hundreds of other drug-related offenders, was sent to Stitt's office for approval. Anderson's sentence was then knocked down from 20 to 9 years, and after only serving 3 of those, he was released. 3 weeks later, he committed the murders.
Bail reform took effect in 2020, and since then, changes have been made to the law twice. Now, Governor Kathy Hochul is proposing making changes for the third time. But will lawmakers be convinced? Governor Kathy Hochul is once again proposing to give judges more discretion when setting bail.
Right now, judges have an inconsistency in the law. They're told to consider the least restrictive means, which means least restrictive means to get them back to show up in court.
This least restrictive standard that Hochul wants to remove from the law sets parameters that judges must follow when deciding bail. But Hochul and even Mayor Eric Adams have said this has done little to deter repeat offenders.
Certainly, least restrictive means would make sense for first offenders, low-level cases. But when it comes to people who are repeat offenders, for example, and they have a history, that a judge should be able to look at that history and make the determination based on that.
But bail reform advocates argue that this least restrictive standard already allows judges to look at a person's criminal history and flight risk. Without this standard, legal aid says more people will end up in jail before they are convicted of any crime.
Setting bail is to prevent people from fleeing to avoid prosecution. Legislatures need to start investing in solutions that are shown to help.
This proposal has been made before, but has been met with strong roadblocks in the state legislature. Democratic State Senator James Skoufis is one of a handful of Democrats who has been vocal about the need for changes to cashless bail.
When I go up to Albany and I say, well, we should revisit bail reform and do X, Y, and Z, half of the people in the room with me who are Democrats want to chop my head off.
Skoufis says there can be other guardrails in place to be sure there is not discrimination.
And that might mean, for example, monitoring judges and having an independent evaluator at the end of the year, at the end of the month, come in and literally case by case look and examine how do you treat these people with these demographics.
But advocates are hopeful that the leaders in both houses are not pressured by the governor to make changes to the law.
Focusing on bail reform, it's really a distraction away from addressing crime. And that means focusing on proven solutions. Again, bail reform is not leading to a rise in crime.
Tonight, terrifying sucker punch attacks putting a spotlight on crime in New York and in cities across the country.
What would make someone want to do that?
I mean, it's just very disgusting and just disappointing to see that happening all over the city.
This assault from over the weekend in a Brooklyn shopping center.
That guy was caught unaware. He didn't know that was coming. And I've seen people done that over and over, time and again. And it's unconscionable.
Governor Kathy Hochul stepped in and ordered Fu to be arrested days later, saying she took the matter into her own hands because Fu was a repeat offender, already on lifetime parole, convicted of raping a 17-year-old back in 1995. Efforts to reach Fu or his lawyer were unsuccessful. The victim's brother speaking about his condition. He's stable, thank God. He's day to day. We simply ask God to help him, or the justice system to be hard-handed against these people. Murder is down 10.5% in New York City this year, but the 7 major crimes tracked by the NYPD are up 36% since last year, and critics have pointed to bail reform as a major factor in that jump. My brother is in this condition because of these criminals walking the street. Earlier this month, the NYPD saying nearly 25% of those arrested for burglary go on to commit another felony within 60 days. But data from the New York City Criminal Justice Agency shows that since bail reform started in 2020, that numbers haven't changed much. The vast majority, more than 95% of people arrested, have not been arrested again, and less than 1% commit violent crimes. And advocates argue that crime has gone up in cities that have not instituted reforms, just like those that have. But New Yorkers say something needs to change.
It kind of makes you think that you got to always be watching your back no matter where you go.
In Seattle, a similar story with murder playing out in broad daylight and on surveillance video. You can see 48-year-old Aaron Folk swinging a metal bar at a 66-year-old man. That victim dying from his injuries over the weekend. He's now charged with first-degree murder and is being held on a $2.5 million bail. He pleaded not guilty. But just 8 days before the attack, Folk was charged with felony harassment in another county for allegedly threatening to kill a public transit safety officer, where he also pleaded not guilty.
Prosecutors wanted to hold Falk on a $10,000 bond, but he was released with a referral for services, according to a spokesperson for the prosecuting attorney's office. Violent crime in Seattle is up this year, rising above records from the past 14 years, according to Seattle PD. Some say these are the kinds of red flags that should not be left unchecked.
When we're talking about violent, repeat felons, and there are times where people are out on 8 felony aggravated robbery bonds and they get another one, and that's ridiculous, and it shouldn't be happening.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now live in studio. So, Stephen, of course, there is a racial component to this debate. What are both sides saying?
Well, critics of bail reform say that black and brown people are far too often the victims of these crimes that are perpetrated by repeat offenders, saying the concern should be on them and not on the accused. But advocates of changing bail systems say there are disparities in bond amounts compared to income and charges for people of color, and something needs to be done to make the system more just. They do point to cities like Houston, Texas, saying there's been success for bail reform for misdemeanor offenses in that city. But, Tom, I got to tell you, there's still so much debate on this issue in Houston, even with that success.